Many famous directors retreat to the privacy of their own screening rooms, but Pedro Almodóvar still likes to see movies in theaters. He lives off a park on the western side of Madrid, and the art houses are clumped together near Plaza de España, not far away. He tries to go at least once a week. If a studio sends him a screener on DVD and he likes the movie, he will watch it a second time in a cinema. One day in September, his driver dropped him off near the Cine Renoir, which was showing Neruda, a film about the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda directed by Pablo Larraín. As Almodóvar walked toward the theater, carrying a Prada bag that held a bottle of water, locals recognized him. Spain is passionate about its movies, and Almodóvar, who just turned 67, is the country's most famous director since Luis Buñuel. Stout and pale, he stands out among the Madrileños with wide dark glasses. He suffers from light sensitivity, and a tuft of white hair that a bird appears to have woven on the top of his head. The Cine Renoir, despite its elegant name, is a small space on the ground floor of an unappealing building, a bomb shelter that shows films. A woman in her 20s asked if she could take a photograph with Almodóvar. Many of his fans are no longer so young. A woman in her 60s praised Julieta, his melancholy new film, which is about a mother whose teenage daughter abandons her. "It made me cry," she said. "I shuddered." "Bueno," Almodóvar answered, smiling. "Muchas gracias." Bueno, Almodóvar, who was a bold showman when he was younger, now carries himself in public at once tentatively and grandly. He clearly enjoys walking unimpeded through the city, but the cinema visits are telling. If you don't want adulation, why go where you'll certainly be recognized? He told me, in Spanish, that the advent of the selfie was a relief. While you gave him an autograph, the other person tended to tell their whole life story. Some of the fans at the Cine Renoir lingered anyway. Almodóvar's movies, abiding close-ups, conversations full of confidences, make people think he must be a good listener. Another older woman spotted him from inside the theater and came out. "Wow," she said. "Congratulations on Julieta, I've seen all your movies." Almodóvar seemed relieved to get into the dark. He sat down, folded a light jacket across his lap, and settled in. Almodóvar began directing feature films in the late 70s. Among his early movies were Dark Habits and Matador. They featured transvestites, transgender people, bondage, rape, and lots of drug use and sex. His stories blurred the lines between gay and straight, coerced and consensual, comedy and melodrama, the funny and the repulsive, high and low art. It was all delivered with a puzzling cheerfulness that made the movies far more transgressive than if their tone had been serious. Spain had just emerged from decades of dictatorship and repression, and Almodóvar's films suggested that the country had leapt from Opus Dei to the Mud Club in a single bound. Critics could not decide whether Almodóvar was the most trivial filmmaker in history or the inventor of an important new strain of postmodernism. In more recent years, Almodóvar has broadened his subject matter and his tone. He runs his own production company, El Deseo, Desire, with his brother, Agustin. Under the umbrella of El Deseo, Pedro makes whatever movie he wants. A new one comes out every couple of years, as with Woody Allen, but no two Almodóvar movies are alike. His aesthetic has become harder and harder to pin down. Critics regularly announce that he has finally left behind his taste for gender games and melodramatic plots with murdered spouses, only to have his next movie prove them wrong. In 2011, he released The Skin I Live In, a lurid thriller in which a plastic surgeon operates on the man who raped his daughter, transforming him into his own female lover. At the film's conclusion, the lover shoots him. 3 years later, Almodóvar released I'm So Excited, a fizzy comedy about an airline flight during which the male attendants get drunk and perform oral sex on the pilots. He merely recalls the critical response, "How on earth? At your age, how could you?" Julieta, based on 3 linked short stories by Alice Munro, is Almodóvar at his most reflective and nuanced. He can be a fierce critic of other Spanish-language filmmakers, but among those he admires is the 40-year-old Larraín. Almodóvar so dislikes what he calls lost biopics that he joked to me that he'd inserted a clause into his will prohibiting anyone from making a movie about his life. But Larraín's film impressed him. Neruda focuses on a moment in the poet's life, a few years after the Second World War, when a hostile Chilean government forced him to flee over the Andes and into Argentina. In Larraín's fantastical rendering, Neruda is pursued by a police official who is also a great reader. The pursuit becomes more metaphysical than real, a study of the seductions of narrative. Almodóvar watched mostly in silence, but when an actor playing Augusto Pinochet appeared, he made a very Spanish clucking noise with his tongue. Afterward, he said that the film was lyrical and pretty, emotional and, at the same time, abstract. It was easy to detect Almodóvar's influence on the movie. Neruda was portrayed